Is DevOps finally dead? You, as the lead researcher on this, what is worth sharing?
The equivalent of throwing a stone into a stormy sea and then trying to see what waves are due to that stone. It's kind of trying to figure that out. I'll just get to it. Just dive into maybe the more detrimental findings of AI.
What can I do to ensure that I'm, transformational?
I don't know. How should I end this? I always can never come up with an ending. Welcome, everyone. Today, we are here to talk about the DORA 2024 report that has all kinds of surprising insights into how your teams work, how to have them work most effectively, the use of AI, of platform engineering, the role of developer experience, and much, much more. But instead of just hearing from me, CTO, co-founder of Sleuth, and Carl, our solution architect, we are very excited to be here joined by Derek DeBellis. DeBellis. Damn it. All right. We're very excited to be joined by Derek DeBellis from Google, who is not just involved in the DORA report, but was actually the lead researcher. So welcome, Derek.
Hi. Yeah, excited to be here. I'm thrilled you're interested in talking about the report. This is my third year, actually, leading up this research. So I'm familiar now.
You're starting to figure it out?
Yeah.
Gone through the sophomore year and everything. Now we're in our junior year, starting to own the thing.
Yeah, I'm feeling a sense of confidence, at least a sense of what to do.
Okay, so you're all ready for Carl and I's gotcha questions that we totally lied about earlier.
I thought we agreed on no gotcha questions, but that's all right. That's fine.
Well, that would be no fun. I'm just kidding. There's no gotcha questions. Well, okay, maybe this one. So we're here to talk about the 2024 report, and it was previously called the State of DevOps report, but I noticed a lot of the branding's moved over to DORA, although I'm looking at this screen, it says State of DevOps. You still have a little bit of the branding, but it does make me wonder, is DevOps finally dead?
I think the way we've been thinking about it, instead of dead, just way too interconnected with so many other things to really call it DevOps. DevOps touches so much, and we don't want to give you the wrong impression that we're just interested in extremely technical practices.
Makes sense. So you heard it first here. Google says DevOps is dead. Just kidding. That's it. That was the only time we'll do that. Now, for those who might be new, so DORA, when you hear DORA, you think of Dora the Explorer. And as much as I know DORA's been around for, God, how long? Like 10, 15 years or something now.
Yeah, this was we tried to make a big splash by saying this is our 10th year doing this report. I think our math is a little off, but more or less with some rounding and talking about reports, it's 10 years.
Who doesn't love an even number? You can't, 9.5, what the hell, just make it 10.
Yeah, exactly. Why waste an opportunity to say 10?
Yes, double digits, baby. All right, so you've been around for a long time. And, this isn't all about the DORA thing. We want to get into the insights. But before we do that, I just wanted to set a little bit of the context. The goal of the DORA report is what?
I see it as a utility framework. That is, people have these practices that they're using, these approaches to things. And a question that someone would rightfully ask is, are these leading to any important outcomes? So we try to figure out, what do people care about? What do people want to get to? What are our goals at an organizational level, a team level, a product level, an individual level? And then from there, we say, all right, are these practices that you're doing helping you connect more with your goals? And we try to use as rigorous of a statistical methodology as we can to make those connections. And I should also note, we added a qualitative researcher this year, because as you might know, numbers are fun and everybody loves quantifying things, but there's so much nuance and subtlety, and we didn't want to lose all that beautiful context.
So what I hear you saying, and I think what many people, for those who might have read the Accelerate book or whatever, when they think DORA, they think 4 metrics: change frequency, change failure rate, change lead time, and mean time to recovery, and they think, well, that's DORA.
Yes.
And I've always found it fascinating how whenever I talk to someone from your team, they're like, no, it's almost like they're almost annoyed by the fact that that's all people think about when they think DORA. Because when they hear DORA, they're thinking, no, it's about practices. It's about the outcomes. It's about how you tie all of these things together.
Yeah.
Yes, there is a metrics component, but a quantitative metrics component, but it's the qualitative and it's the practice and it's the improvement actually, which is delivering the value here.
Yeah. When I first started, I didn't have a lot of that previous DORA history with me. So I just thought the 4 keys, the ones you mentioned, were just a convenient measure that we had. But I have found that it has gained a lot of traction in the industry and a lot of people use it. And there's a lot of value that people get out of them. But that said, it's kind of just a really interesting node in this really complex network of practices and outcomes and mechanisms.
Yeah, I would say that's echoed our as well. So we sell a tool that helps you track your metrics, but really just track your team's performance and how you're aligning your team to your business goals. And in the beginning, we were just all about those 4 metrics, thinking like, oh yeah, and then you see other competitors and us, like, oh, and this metric.
Yeah, exactly.
And what we realize is you could just come up with metrics all day long, but that's really not alone going to get you to where you want to go.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this has been highlighted by many researchers. But like the SPACE framework, for instance, it's really just saying that if you really focus it's not just to say just, but like a key message I get from it is if you just focus on one aspect of anything, it's going to give you a really small sliver of what's going on. It's not going to be actionable.
Right.
It's gameable. So not until you start thinking holistically from metrics point of view, or even just how you evaluate and understand things, do you really have a chance of making useful changes?
Yep. Agreed. Oh, I could talk about this topic all day long because it is kind of one of my pet peeves. It's like, oh, I just need to measure this thing and somehow magically things happen. It's like, no, if you never use the metrics, if you never work with a team to improve over time, you're just creating, anyways, whatever.
Yeah,
we'll move on from there because what we're really here to talk about is all the things that your report this year found. There's a lot of things that I think are almost counterintuitive. And so I'm really kind of curious to get you as the lead researcher on this to give your highlights, so to speak. What did you think is worth sharing?
Yeah, 100%. Am I ruining the call by saying that the sun has changed its location?
It adds a dynamic feel to the video. It's great.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. So here's a brief overview of the report as far as I see it. You ask another author or person involved in the report, they might weight things differently, but we kind of broke it down into, hey, let's look at these 4 keys, right? Let's see, I don't know if you know, but every year we do this sort of, at least for a while, we've done this cluster analysis where we see anywhere between low, medium, high, and elite is what we normally see in terms of these clusters on the 4 keys. I could show you that, actually.
Yeah,
if you
there we
don't
go.
mind me scrolling through here. We get a little something like this, where here's a cluster. Each row represents a cluster. Then we have each of the 4 keys right here: change lead time, deployment frequency, change fail rate, failed deployment recovery time. And then we're able to say where each cluster tends to fall on that metric. And then we have the percentage of respondents that fall into that. So we start off the report that way. This year was a nice clean break where we got the 4 clusters again. We don't always get the 4 clusters. And so we try to understand that. We try to understand a little bit of why the medium and high clusters are a little different. They're not perfectly medium and high. And by that, I mean deployment frequency is wonderful for the high cluster, right? But then all of a sudden, the medium cluster is better in terms of change failure rate. So we see a kind of a trade-off here, something we might want to dive into. So that's the big takeaway from that cluster analysis for us. But then we go into AI, so people's attitudes. The short answer to that is they think it's leading to a lot of gains in their productivity. Just if you just ask somebody, hey, is AI helping you be more productive as a developer or someone adjacent to development? And they'll say what we're seeing is majority of people will say yes. It is really helping me be more productive. Interestingly, that doesn't come with trust. So it brings up a question, what is the right level of trust? Maybe it's actually not, I completely 100% trust AI. Maybe it's more, I'm skeptical, but I'm going to use it for, it's going to get me somewhere. Am I going to copy and paste the code and make that and ship that? Maybe not. In terms of AI adoption, majority of developers are using AI for at least one of their tasks. And I should be careful. I keep saying developers. There's a lot more roles that are involved in this than just what you would like the prototypical developer.
That's right. Yeah.
We can look at that then too. Also sort of the breakdown of our demographics and our roles and our firmographics. But another sort of takeaway from AI is when you just look at the relationship AI adoption has to downstream outcomes, it's largely a positive story. That is a good story for AI. Things start looking a little less rosy when you talk about software delivery. And I'm sure you're going to want to dive into that later, so I won't sort of ruin that story. But not a beautiful picture for AI there. And then we go into developer experience, and we're trying to just sort of see what factors really help the overall well-being of employees and developers. And the answer is stable priorities, transformational leadership. Those kind of come up as two important ones. This year we did some exploration with platforms too. And this is sort of the last section. And what we find there with that is there's widespread adoption of platforms. Doesn't depend too much on industry, whether you adopt a platform or not. It is beneficial in some respects in terms of productivity. Developers and people adjacent developers who are using platforms feel more productive. Leads to some challenges when it comes to maybe burnout and also software delivery. Might be worth sort of trying to understand why, because overall, data is kind of a shadow of all these other processes, right? There's so many, you know this from looking at metrics, there's so much movement and so many, I don't know, sort of waves that are impacting these metrics. It's hard to understand exactly what generated them always, right? You could say it's definitely this that's making this metric move up and down, but it's not a closed system. So it's actually really interesting to try to think what would make data take this shape and move this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's interesting because, I mean, just going back to it, you're a researcher and this project as a whole, that's its goal, is to take the data, but not just look at data specifically, but, tie it to outcomes and understand what's coming behind the data. I think we were talking earlier about just how tricky it is to ask these questions. You start doing analysis, you create a hypothesis, you go back to the data and you say, oh, if we only asked this one question, that would have answered that. Like, damn it. It's such a tricky back and forth.
And you want to make the survey short because you could say, all right, we'll just make a 50-minute survey, but then your answers are going to be horrible, right? Because the people are going to tune out at 10 minutes and then everything they click is just going to be noise. Yeah. And I mean, to that point, we have sort of an analogy in the report about understanding a process or a practice and how it impacts outcomes is like the equivalent of throwing a stone into a stormy sea and then trying to see what waves are due to that stone. It's kind of trying to figure that out.
I like that. I haven't heard that one before. That one's a good one.
Yeah, it's got a little zen to it.
Yeah.
We'll do
I might steal that.
Thanks.
All right. So you mentioned AI, and I think there's a lot of interesting insights. Sometimes I think, as Carl would say, what's that word that you use? Kind of counterintuitive insights on AI. I was curious to dive into that a little bit, but I think the other question I have, and I'll just ask both and kind of let you answer them, is as you adopt a new technology like AI, what does your research show how one should do that safely? For example, is it just follow the 4 metrics and no matter what technology you do, as long as those metrics stay solid, you're good to go? Is there more depth there? Is there some signs that you would recommend looking at based on the data, qualitative, quantitative signs?
Yeah, definitely. I think our philosophy that we talk about in the report is maybe think about it as iterative, right? Instead of having this, and this is what we're finding in qualitative research, this feeling of FOMO, this feeling of like there are these competitive pressures. Everyone's adopting AI. Let's just throw AI against the wall, not measure how it we respond as an organization to throwing the AI against the wall to try to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe instead of doing that, a hunch would be that you say, all right, we think AI, and maybe we use data from reports like this, will have a positive impact on, I don't know, developer productivity, for example, in these areas. So you say, let's focus on this one outcome, right? And see, and maybe run a pretty rigorous sort of study of sorts in your own company. See how introducing AI in this scenario impacts those outcomes. It might be small, but just pick a small corner of your world where you can try to understand the ramifications a little more easily. And then when you learn it didn't work, or it did work, or it didn't work as well as you wanted, say, what's something we could change a little bit about this? And
it sounds like there's some parallels there to how, you mentioned before about the hypothesis, look at the data, the questions, trying to, go back and forth. It feels like there's something about that scientific process which could be used by a CTO of an org saying, I want to do something. Yeah. I want to get my developers faster, whatever it is. And then they say, okay, but what does that mean? You almost have to go through a similar process, it sounds like, of create a hypothesis. The problem is they're spending too much time on this. And then I'm going to measure, I'm going to put in a counter thing. And then I'm going to look at that over time. Then I'm revisit the hypothesis, maybe create a second one. Something like sounds like there's a lot of parallels there.
Yeah, 100%. And also in a way, it's not too different from how a thermostat works. I'm not an expert on thermostats, but it says these are kind of our goals. We want a temperature right around here. And when those goals don't hit that, it adapts by like turning on your heaters and things like that, or your air conditioning. And obviously we like to think of ourselves as more nuanced than that. And I think we are, right? We have to form collective goals as an organization, and they're more complex than sort of a binary, too hot, too cold kind of thing. But yeah, it's exactly that. You're sort of adapting to how the environment is to your liking, and then just iterating and seeing what gets things a little closer to what your goals are. And that's exactly what you would imagine a CTO or anybody in a leadership position would do.
Mm-hmm. So if you had someone that was adopting AI and they came to you and said, what have you learned this year specifically? What is like one thing that I could take away and change how I'm doing something? What would be that insight?
Yeah. Well, the big worry that we have from the data, and I can sort of dive into this. Let's see. If I click, I got some good advice that I can just click on things here and get to where I need to go.
I like how I'm teaching you how to interact with your own report. That's awesome.
So we see I'll just get to it. Just dive into maybe the more detrimental findings of AI. This is AI's impact on delivery performance. We broke down the 4 keys into both throughput and stability. There's a longer story there, but throughput, I think of it as speed. in a way, right? Mm-hmm. And stability is kind of its change failure rate. And well, it's the inverse of change failure rate. How much time are you spending doing rework is another example of sort of delivery stability. So increasing AI adoption is leading to small but meaningful decreases in throughput, and relative to other outcomes, a very substantial decrease in delivery stability. And then the question is, why, right? What's going on? What is causing something that's what we think is core to any good DevOps team or software delivery process? Stability, right? Because we know if stability goes down, burnout increases, for example. Job satisfaction decreases. Pretty much everything you want your employees to feel is not what they're feeling. Would be another way to put it. Also, your product's performance is going to follow, right? Product performance is highly dependent on good delivery stability, what we're finding. So then the question is, so what's behind this? And the answer is, We're not positive, but we think this is kind of the story of how we should start thinking about AI, in that are we overly reliant on it, right? Are we shipping things upstream, things further up in the software delivery lifecycle? Are those not really leading to downstream impacts, right? So if you think about it like a house, right? If the foundation is built poorly, even if it's built really fast, and the code reviews and things like that are going really fast, to get out of the analogy, what you do later is going to suffer, right? So if you think about this deployment stage and this delivery moment as following code reviews, approvals of testing, if those are all suffering a little bit with AI, even if they look like they're going well, there's sort of a problem here. And this is where it gets back to a more strategic implementation of AI would be recommended, as opposed to what we're hearing over and over again is there's, from both individuals and organizations, is there's so much competitive pressure to adopt AI. We don't have a real strategy or clear policies in place. And we're just saying use AI. And that's leading to some benefits, but also downstream some major detriments. And we're not the only ones finding patterns like this on downstream impacts of AI.
And just again, to set the context, this isn't like you interviewed 50 people at Google. Like, how many people were interviewed in this last set?
Well, so for this data set, we're looking at about nearly 3,000 people.
Okay.
In terms of the qualitative interviews, Kevin Storer, our qualitative researcher, is going to be mad at me if I get this number wrong, but let's say 100 to 200 like in-depth interviews is
actual
where we
conversations with people.
Yeah.
Right. So you weren't just looking at the survey said 5 out of 6 or 6, just a number. You also then went to interview people so that you had multiple aspects of the data of the situation.
Exactly. And what the qualitative provides is both on both ends, right? We can generate hypotheses that we can test in the data. And then we could also try to use the qualitative research to explain what's going on in the data. It's a little ad hoc there, but then we get an idea of, all right, let's go talk to people and see if they say anything just naturally that would help explain what's going on here. It gets us out of our own minds in a lot of ways and helps us generate a lot of new perspectives.
Right. Okay, so I would say, if I had to summarize, it sounds like the insight here is that if you do what a lot of people are doing, which is adopt a new technology, in this case it's AI, but honestly it could really be any technology, and you see some benefit and you just keep going based on that, you might be shooting yourself in the foot, because there's other unexpected impacts, like on stability, that may not be something you'd actually want if you took a bigger view. And so then the recommendation for a leader here is to, when adopting something new, don't just look at one dimension, look at multiple dimensions as a safeguard. I think then, just to counterbalance that, you did say when you're first starting, just kind of pick one thing and look at that. But I think if I had to put those two are not contradictory, but they're complementary in the sense of you focus on one, but you still need to keep a picture of the bigger, and then you just choose different ones as you go through.
I think so. Yeah, maybe your outcomes set still stays wide, right? So you're exploring the impact of your change across a larger scale. So you're looking at the software delivery performance, you're looking at code review speed and everything. I agree with that, but maybe what I meant is that the implementation you make is focused into a particular area. So instead of saying we're going to use AI for code reviews, we're going to use it for approvals, we're going to use it to write all our code, we're going to use it for debugging, we're going to use it for testing, maybe have a clear policy about where you're thinking of rolling out AI first. Because right now, based on what we're seeing, people are using it for almost everything. So I'm going to scroll. It might be a little annoying. Pardon me. Hope you don't get vertigo. But we're finding that people are using it for, it might be hard to see, but almost everything. So this dashed line here is the, if it's to the right of that, we're talking about majority of respondents are using it for this. So we're using AI for everything. So it's hard to say what's causing the detriment, what's causing the benefit. Maybe a more focused rollout of AI would help people not necessarily quantify in a purely scientific way, but at least understand or have a sense of what's causing this. What's the mechanism behind AI's impact?
I see.
Right, kind of eat the elephant one bite at a time type thing, but it's also the change one thing at a time. Don't try to. I mean, anyone who's done any kind of performance debugging of a system, for example, knows this for sure. Like, you don't go and say it's slow. Here, let me change 50 things. Like, it's slow. First, let me benchmark it so that I know where I'm at, and then I want to make one change, and I want to check. And that's how you discover things. You try to do it all at once, even though it sounds more efficient in practice. It ends up taking longer.
Takes longer, and if something goes wrong, good luck pinpointing where that's coming from. And maybe to an extent, AI is just a different reality, right? It's just, it's not, we're having a debate right now. Is this a qualitatively different type of new technology, right? Because it's not the first time a new technology has been introduced and people have to learn how to use it and adopt it, and there's growing pains. But is there something qualitatively different about AI? For example, can you really scope it, right? If you give a developer a bunch of AI tools, maybe as this graph suggests, good luck saying, use it for A.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, I've definitely monopolized this conversation. Sorry, Carl. Carl, I know you even had a bunch of prepared questions that you wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think so. Just, for the sake of time, I wanted to kind of shift a little bit. I think it's related to what we were chatting about with AI here, right? But that note that you made earlier about, transformational leadership. And I saw a stat from the report that mentioned, a 25% increase in transformational leadership shows gains in job satisfaction, productivity, and performance across team, product, and the whole organization. Mm-hmm. So I guess, with that, right, what if I'm a new leader to an organization that's just starting this journey? What can I do to ensure that I'm, transformational and make sure that I'm doing the right things to be able to hit that 25% increase and see all those benefits?
Yeah, definitely. So transformational leadership is, for us, it's a set of questions that group together really strongly, suggesting there's some kind of factor there. And what I just pulled up on my screen are the 5 aspects that we use in our survey for transformational leadership, right? So I guess my answer to that question based on our data would be, the more you can turn up each one of these aspects, the more transformational your leadership would be, right? So, and this actually fits in with a lot of the other stuff we have. Having a super clear, maybe stable vision, we could talk about that, but a really clear vision, right? Knowing how to communicate in a way that inspires people, helping people not only see things in different ways, break out of old perspectives, but encourage them to be the ones that break out of these old ways of looking at things. That sort of goes with the supporting aspect, right? Mm-hmm. And then lastly, people I don't know about, we all kind of like recognition. I don't know about what way we like recognition, but it's tough to work for a really long time on something and put your heart and soul into it to not get any reverberations back from the world that it's positive and helping somebody. And that's what we see with user centricity too, right? Teams that are on products that really care about helping people or focusing on the user, they have higher job satisfaction, lower levels of burnout. It to me, that just suggests maybe we like doing things that help other people, and that makes us feel good and it inspires us, as opposed to, and I don't know about you, but I've been on projects in my career where it's like, leader A, very important, needs this right now. do this for leader A. And you're like, yeah, I mean, cool. I'll definitely help out, but I really wish I was doing something that helped people.
Yeah, and you don't know what is that for, right? And what is then, maybe you have some idea what it's for, but then did it actually do the thing that we were hoping to do, or was it just a checkbox that we were able to deliver?
Exactly, yeah. Deliver valuable solutions as opposed to like checkboxes for features or like moving one bug away for the time being kind of thing.
Yeah. I guess kind of related to this, right? Just to sneak in one more question here. I also saw a note that mentioned that stable environments are where people thrive. So, but when I think about stability, sometimes I think, don't rock the boat, keep things kind of maybe as they are, right? So how do you kind of balance, right? Of, again, if I'm just starting off this journey, how do I balance that in maintaining a stable environment to help my people thrive while at the same time trying to increase, some of these velocity metrics that we have, right? Around frequency or change lead time specifically coming from DORA.
That's a great question. And I think a necessary one, because we're all in environments, maybe in part thanks to AI, where things are shifting so rapidly. How could we possibly keep priorities stable, right? We have to kind of, maybe this will sound like I'm in Silicon Valley, but we have to pivot, right? We have to be able to change on a dime and see what's going on and explore a new space, because that's how you keep up in a really fast-paced industry. Mm-hmm. And that's probably true, but what's also true is when stability and priorities disappears, burnout increases, productivity decreases, job satisfaction decreases. So, and another thing that's worth noting is nothing seems to help, right? So
interesting.
You would think transformational leadership might be able to mitigate the impact of instability of priorities. It doesn't. Would maybe even AI or documentation quality. We threw everything at the wall to try to see, is anything in this data minimize the impact that instability and priorities has? And we couldn't find anything. That's just to say it is tough, right? So maybe the answer then is, if you anticipate change, I'm trying to put a leadership hat on. Just know that you're going to have to put buffers in place, because it is going to create, I guess, what is it called? Allostasis, right? A stress event that's going to affect your organization, and just be in position to catch that early, because it doesn't look like it's not going to happen. I guess the question is, can you just make sure enough of the other things that help with burnout and job satisfaction decreases are in place that essentially counteract that? And maybe another thing is, it's all about framing. So maybe your priorities are really concrete, and that might cause them to shift all the time. But if you can have a high level set of priorities, ship things that help people, maybe you ship those lower level sort of subordinate goals, but you still have an overarching mission that helps stabilize things. So maybe the framing could help minimize that impact.
Yeah, that's interesting, because everybody knows that it's common wisdom, I suppose, that there is no perfect thing. Everything has a trade-off of something. But it's interesting to find that you couldn't find, wow, you introduce more speed, you create more instability perhaps, and there's really nothing that can do that. So that's just part of the cost there. It's not oh, no problem, we'll just up the documentation or up this, and now we're all good. It probably just is more a lesson for a leader to make sure they understand the ramifications of the decisions they're making, and understand that you can't just throw people at it or throw money at it, or our usual ways to mitigate. Make sure that the value is really what you're looking for here.
Yeah, exactly. And if you trust your employees and they care about the company's mission, what you're asking them to switch is probably something they care deeply about, right? So there's going to be some costs to that. And that might be it might be a sign of a good thing. If I didn't care that you told me to stop working on something at least a little bit, you'd be oh, well, you should have cared a little bit more about that project, Eric.
Yep. All right. Well, there's so much more we want to talk to you, but we did run out of time, unfortunately. Yeah. So I want to say a huge thank you for coming by and sharing I guess first, thank you for all your work on the DORA report. Thank you for coming by to explain a lot of it to us. For those who are watching, if you want to learn more about the DORA organization and a lot of these practices and deep dive into the report, you can go to, I believe it's dora.dev.
Yes.
And there's even a mailing list, and there is community meetups, and I think you even did an in-person one a couple years ago. There's a lot of activity if you're interested in this type of topic and want to learn from other leaders. If you want to learn more about our take here at Sleuth and the things that we found, you can follow us on LinkedIn or on YouTube. And if you're interested in measuring and improving your team, then check out sleuth.io for more information there. But again, big thanks to Patrick for, damn it. Big thanks to Derek for coming by and sharing his information. And we'll see you next time. I don't know. How should I end this? I always can never come up with an ending. God damn it.
Should I say thanks for having me? I really appreciated this.
Yeah, let's do that whole thing over. That was shit. All right. Thank you very much, Derek, for coming by and sharing some of his insights. I should probably prompt you better than that. God damn it. All right, hold on. This time for real. Thank you very much, Derek, for coming by and sharing your insights. It's been a pleasure to have you, and I've certainly learned a lot. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me and exploring this with me. I definitely learned a lot just thinking about it with you.
Yes, great, because that's what it's all about, learning and then learning and applying, which is the whole point. So anyways, check out the DORA report, check out DORA.dev, check out Sleuth.io. Catch you next time. I don't know, man. We'll go with that.
I think that works. That works.
Good.